The day I saved her, I had no idea it would change everything. I was walking back to my ship, my boots crunching on the parched soil of the alien planet. I had been sent here for a routine mission, scouting the outskirts of this newly discovered world. But then I saw her. She was lying there, a figure barely visible against the dark red rocks. Her body was motionless, her skin pale, and her breathing shallow. I approached cautiously, unsure if she was dead or alive. I didn't know what she was, at first. All I saw was the strange markings on her skin, glowing faintly, and the sharp alien features that didn't belong to any human I knew. But there was something in her eyes when they flickered open. A mix of pain and fear, but beneath that, something more. A sense of recognition. She reached out weakly as if pleading for something, and I instinctively stepped closer, kneeling beside her. Who are you?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm Adam," I said, unsure of what to make of her. "I'm human. You're safe now." Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment it felt like she was searching me, as though I held some answer she had been looking for. Then she whispered again, a question more urgent this time. "Why did you help me?" The words struck me like a punch to the gut. In all the years I'd been part of this intergalactic exploration program, I had never encountered anything like her. An alien, a being from another world, and I had saved her life without hesitation. Why? Was it because of the humanity that I had left, or was it something else? I wasn't sure. Her breathing was still shallow, but there was a spark in her gaze. That suggested she wasn't going to give up without a fight. She wasn't just another victim of the galaxy's cruelty. There was strength in her, something I could feel deep within me, calling to me. As I lifted her into my arms and carried her back to the ship, I couldn't help but wonder what I had just done. I had saved her, yes, but what had I truly started by taking her with me? What was the cost of saving a life in a world where survival often meant destroying others? And as I looked down at her delicate features, her hand resting against my chest, I couldn't help but feel the weight of an unspoken promise hanging in the air. She would owe me a life, but that was just the beginning of something neither of us could have predicted. The ship hummed with the familiar vibrations of interstellar travel, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. As the stars streaked past the viewports, my thoughts kept drifting back to the woman lying in the medical bay. Amelia. That's what I decided to call her, though I still wasn't sure if it was her real name or just something I had instinctively chosen. She had yet to speak much, only offering a few words here and there when she regained enough strength. But those eyes, that look, like she knew something I didn't, something I was afraid to understand. I stood at the threshold of the medical bay watching her. She was lying on the table, her breathing now steady, but her body still seemed fragile, as though her very existence had been forged in something far more fragile than anything I'd ever known. Her skin, with its delicate blue hue and intricate glowing patterns, seemed alien even in the dim light of the room. Yet, there was a strange familiarity to her, like I had met her before, or perhaps, in some way, I had always been destined to find her. She stirred, her eyes flickering open. Slowly she lifted her hand, the faint glow of her markings pulsing with each movement. When she saw me standing there, she sat up quickly, a startled look crossing her face. "No. You're still here?" she asked, her voice shaky but determined. I thought you'd leave." "Why would I leave?" I asked, my voice gentler than I had meant it to be. She blinked, her gaze studying me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "You saved me. I owe you my life. I can't just be a burden to you." Her words were heavy, like the weight of the universe was pressing down on her. I had seen it in her eyes before. The fear, the realization that something had been set in motion that she had no control over. She didn't want to owe anyone anything, especially not someone like me, a human, someone who, in her world, would likely be considered inferior. I took a step closer, the sound of my boots, soft against the metal floor. You're not a burden. You're alive, and that's what matters. Her eyes hardened, and for the first time, she spoke with a clarity I hadn't heard before. Then you must understand that I can't just accept your help without giving something in return. I don't know who you are or why you saved me, but I will find a way to repay this debt. I frowned, my mind racing with confusion. Repay? I didn't save you because I expected payment. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Her lips curled into a faint, sad smile. You think it's that simple? Nothing is free in the universe, Adam. Everything comes at a price. I didn't know how to respond to that. She was right, of course. Nothing in this galaxy was free. We had all made our choices, whether consciously or not, and those choices had consequences. I had no idea what kind of debt she was talking about, but I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't the kind of person to let someone owe her anything without balancing the scales. I didn't expect anything, I finally said, my voice firm. But if you're going to offer something, just know I won't take anything that feels like a burden to you. We're both in this together now. She looked at me for a long moment, her gaze softening just slightly. Together, huh? Her voice was barely above a whisper. You don't understand. I am bound by something much larger than you or me, Adam. And when the time comes, you'll see just how much I owe you. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I had no idea what she meant, but something told me that this was just the beginning. She might have been bound by an obligation I couldn't even fathom, but I was beginning to understand one thing. Whatever came next, it would change everything. For both of us. As I left the medical bay, my mind was spinning. The questions were mounting. What was she? Why had she been left in such a state? And why did I feel like I had just stepped into a story much larger than I could ever have imagined? The hum of the ship was the only sound that filled the silence between us. Amelia and I had been traveling for what felt like days, but the weight of the conversation still hung over us. The air was thick with unspoken questions, both from her and from me. She had made it clear that there was more to her story, more that she wasn't ready to share, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something about her had begun to pull me in, deeper than I had ever expected. As the ship descended, through the atmosphere of a new planet, the view outside was breathtaking. Bright blue skies stretched across rolling hills, dotted with strange structures that could only be the work of alien civilizations. But even amidst the alien beauty, I couldn't focus on anything but the woman in front of me. She had closed, herself off again, eyes cast downward, her body language guarded. Amelia, I started, my voice softer than usual. I know you're not ready to talk, but I need you to understand something. I'm not going anywhere. Not until you're ready. She didn't look at me, but I saw her hands tense at her sides, the faint glow of her markings flickering in the dim light. It was almost like she was struggling with something inside herself, a battle she wasn't sure she could win. I don't deserve your kindness, Adam, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. You've already given me more than I could ever repay. But the truth is, I'm not like you. I don't belong in your world. Her words stung, but I wasn't about to let them shake me. You're not a burden, Amelia. You're a person, just like anyone else. You belong wherever you want to belong. Her eyes flicked to mine for the briefest moment, and I could see the conflict in them. There was something dark beneath the surface, a deep fear that she was fighting with everything she had. You don't understand, she said, her voice breaking, slightly. I was raised for a purpose I can't escape. I stepped closer, the distance between us suddenly feeling like an abyss. What do you mean? What purpose? She closed her eyes, her expression softening. I was created for war, Adam. My people, they designed me to fight, to conquer. I was bred to be a weapon, and nothing more. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. It was hard to wrap my mind around it. This woman, this alien, had been designed for destruction. How could something so beautiful, so full of life have been built for such a fate? You're telling me they made you into a weapon? I asked, struggling to keep the shock from my voice. Yes, she said, her voice hollow. My whole existence was to serve that purpose, and now I'm free. But at what cost? I don't know how to be anything else. I don't know how to live without that weight hanging over me. I couldn't imagine the kind of pressure she was under. To be raised knowing that you were nothing more than a tool, a means to an end. But what struck me most wasn't the burden of her past. It was the way she spoke of freedom. The way she had tasted it for the first time, and now she didn't know what to do with it. You're not that anymore, Amelia, I said, taking another step toward her. You're free. You don't have to be who they made you to be. She looked up at me then, her eyes fierce, but there was a vulnerability behind them that I hadn't seen before. How do you know that? How can you be so sure? Her voice wavered as she took a shaky breath. I'm afraid that one day, I'll go back to who I was. I'll become the weapon again, the monster they created, and I won't be able to stop it. I didn't know what to say to that, but what I did know was that she wasn't alone anymore. She wasn't the weapon she had been bred to be, and she didn't have to carry that past by herself. We would figure this out together. You don't have to do anything alone, I said quietly, my hand resting lightly on her shoulder. You've got me, and I'll make sure you never have to face that darkness again. Amelia's breath hitched, and for a moment I thought she might pull away. But she didn't. She let out a shaky breath, and when she finally spoke again, her voice was softer, tinged with something I couldn't quite place. Thank you, she whispered. But you don't know what you're getting yourself into. I'm not sure I even know. I didn't have all the answers. Hell, I didn't even know how we were going to survive this journey. But I knew one thing for sure. Whatever came next, we would face it together. The days blurred together as we continued our journey across the galaxy. Amelia and I, caught in this strange alliance, spent more time in silence than I would have liked. The ship's cockpit was always quiet, save for the hum of the engines, and the occasional chatter from the navigation system. But despite the vastness of the universe around us, everything felt too small, too confined. Amelia's past loomed over us like an invisible storm, threatening to break through at any moment. We had landed on another planet, a place of wild, untamed landscapes. The air was thick with the scent of alien flora, the sky a deep violet that seemed to stretch forever. But the beauty of it all was lost on me. All I could think about was the weight of Amelia's words. She had been bred for war, bred to kill. And now, here she was, a fugitive in her own skin, carrying the burden of a purpose she had never asked for. Are you sure about this? I asked, glancing over at her as she checked the ship's systems, her fingers flying over the controls with practiced ease. She didn't look up. There's nowhere else to go. I didn't press her further. I knew she was right. We couldn't go back to her people, not after everything that had happened. They would hunt her down, use her, control her, and as much as I hated it, I couldn't let that happen. The silence between us stretched as I stood, lost in my own thoughts. Then I heard her voice, soft but urgent. Adam, I need to tell you something. I turned to find her standing by the viewport, her back to me, staring out at the alien landscape beyond. There was something in the way she held herself, tense, defensive, like she was preparing herself for a battle. "What is it?" I asked, stepping closer. Amelia finally turned, her eyes meeting mine. There was a new determination in her gaze, one that I hadn't seen before, but beneath that, there was fear. Fear of herself, fear of what she might become. "I didn't tell you everything before," she said, her voice steady but heavy. "There's more to my past than what I've shared with you." I waited, trying to read the expression on her face. "Go on," she took a deep breath. "I wasn't just created for war, Adam. I was chosen. I was selected by the leaders of my people to be the weapon that would change everything. My bloodline, my DNA. It was engineered to be the perfect soldier." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening as the reality of what she was saying hit me. "But you're not that anymore. You're not their weapon." Amelia shook her head slowly, her eyes filling with emotion. "I want to believe that. I really do. But what if I can't escape who I was meant to be?" I stepped closer, my heart aching for her. "You can. You've already started, Amelia. You're here with me, aren't you? You're choosing your own path now." She laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the quiet of the ship. "Choosing my own path? I'm running, Adam. I'm running from who I am, from what I was made to do. And I don't know how long I can keep running before I turn around and face it." Her words hit me like a slap. I didn't have the answers she needed. I didn't know how to fix everything she had been through, how to erase the history she was trying so desperately to escape. But I couldn't give up on her. Not now. Not when she was so close to finding herself. "You don't have to do this alone," I said, my voice low, sincere. "We'll figure this out. Together." She looked at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine. There was something there, something like hope, flickering deep within her. But it was fragile, like a star about to burn out. "I don't know how to trust anyone anymore," she admitted quietly. "I've been betrayed by my own people. I don't know who I can count on." "You can count on me," I replied, stepping closer, until we were just inches apart. "I won't turn my back on you, Amelia. No matter what happens, I'm not leaving you." For the first time in a long while, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something that resembled trust. She wasn't ready to fully let go of her fear, but I could see that I was beginning to break through. Slowly, but surely, I was getting closer. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. And in that moment, I knew. No matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together. There was no going back for either of us now. Whatever the future held, it was ours to shape. The next few days were a blur of constant motion. The planet we had landed on was vast, a wilderness of dense forests and jagged mountain ranges. The terrain was rugged, unforgiving, but it provided us with the solitude we needed. I kept my eyes on the horizon, always alert, watching for any signs that someone, something, might be tracking us. Amelia, on the other hand, seemed to lose herself in the landscape, spending hours exploring the unknown world around us. Her focus had shifted from the heavy burden of her past to the overwhelming present. But I could see it in her. Whenever she thought no one was watching, she would stop, her gaze distant, as though something was tugging at her, pulling her back to a place she couldn't forget. We set up camp in a quiet valley, surrounded by towering trees and the faint sound of a stream flowing nearby. The serenity of the place contrasted sharply with the tension between us. Even though we weren't speaking much, I could feel the connection growing, even if it was unspoken. There was a trust building, slowly, piece by piece, but I could also feel the weight of her past pressing down on her, and I knew she wasn't going to stay quiet about it for much longer. One evening, as we sat by the fire, the crackling of the flames the only sound between us, she spoke. Her voice was low, almost hesitant, as if testing the waters before plunging into the deep end. "I've been thinking," she began, her eyes focused on the flickering flames, "about what you said before, about how I'm not a weapon anymore." I stayed silent, waiting for her to continue. I didn't want to push her, but I couldn't help the urge to ask, to know what was going through her mind. "I'm not so sure," she continued, her voice growing darker. "I'm afraid of what might happen if I lose control. I've been trained my entire life to fight, to kill, and that part of me is always there, lurking beneath the surface. I can feel it." She paused, looking at me for the first time that evening. "What if I hurt you, Adam? What if I can't stop myself?" The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I wanted to deny it, to tell her that she would never hurt me, that I would never let her become the person she feared. But I knew better. I knew she was fighting a battle within herself, one that I couldn't fight for her. Instead, I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Amelia, you're not that person. You're not a weapon, not anymore. You've proven that already. I believe in you." She shook her head, her expression a mixture of frustration and fear. "You don't understand. The things I've done, the things I've been trained to do, they're not something I can just forget. You think I can just turn it off? Become someone I'm not?" I couldn't imagine the struggle she was going through. But I also knew one thing. I couldn't give up on her now, not when she was starting to fight for herself, to fight against the darkness that had been forced upon her. "Maybe you can't forget," I said softly. "But that doesn't mean you have to become it. Again, you're in control now. You get to choose who you are, who you want to be, and I'll be here with you, every step of the way." Amelia's eyes softened, a flicker of something, a glimmer of hope, flashing across her face. But it was fleeting, and I could tell she wasn't ready to let it take hold just yet. "I don't know if I can do this, Adam," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "but I want to try. For you, for me." And in that moment, I knew we were on the edge of something dangerous, something that could change everything. Amelia was fighting a war within herself, but it wasn't a battle she had to face alone. I would be there to fight beside her, no matter what the future held. The fire crackled, and the night grew colder, but for the first time since we had met, I felt like we were on the same page. We weren't alone in this anymore. And whatever darkness lay ahead, we would face it together. The days began to stretch out, and we fell into a rhythm. Life on the alien planet wasn't easy, but it was simpler than anything I had ever known. The terrain was harsh, and the wildlife unpredictable, but the isolation gave us a kind of peace. For the first time since I had met Amelia, I began to feel like we were both healing. But even in this peaceful moment, I could sense the storm inside her was far from over. Amelia still struggled, though she didn't show it as much anymore. Her battle was quiet, hidden beneath the surface. She spent hours meditating by the river, her mind clearly at war with itself. I wanted to help, but there was little I could do. She had to face her demons on her own. One afternoon, as we prepared to move camp to a safer location, one that was farther from the mountains that seemed to be a haven for dangerous creatures, I noticed Amelia standing at the edge of the clearing, her gaze fixed on something in the distance. "Amelia!" I called out, walking toward her. "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. Her back was stiff, her posture tense, as though she was listening to something I couldn't hear. After a long moment, she finally turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "They're coming," she said, her voice flat, devoid of the usual warmth I had come to expect. "I can feel them." My heart skipped a beat. "Who's coming?" "The ones who created me," she whispered, her gaze piercing through the trees as if she could see something I couldn't. "They've found us. They know I've escaped. I felt a chill run through me. This was the moment I had been dreading, the one where her past would catch up to us. We need to go, I said, my voice urgent. Now. She nodded, her face a mask of determination. But there was something else in her eyes, something more than fear. It was guilt, self-loathing. She had spent so much time running, but there was always a part of her that believed she would eventually have to face what she was. A weapon, a creation designed for destruction. And now that day had come. Amelia, I said, stepping closer to her. You don't have to face this alone. She met my gaze then, her eyes sharp, as if she was weighing my words, testing them. I wasn't made to be weak, she replied, her tone hardening. And neither were you. Her words stung, but I understood them. She had been built for battle, for survival. But what she didn't realize, what she hadn't yet allowed herself to see, was that strength wasn't just about fighting. It was about standing your ground in the face of fear. It was about choosing to be better, even when everything inside you screamed that you were destined for something far darker. I don't want you to do this alone, Amelia, I said again, this time with more conviction. We face this together. You're not alone anymore. For a long moment, she didn't speak. The wind rustled the leaves around us, the sound of distant wildlife making its presence known. Finally, she exhaled deeply, as if releasing a breath she had been holding in for far too long. I don't know what's going to happen next, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I'll fight for you, for us. I'll fight until my last breath. And in that moment, I knew. I knew that the woman standing in front of me, this alien, this warrior who had been forced into a life she never chose, wasn't just a survivor. She was a fighter, and together we would face whatever came next. As we packed up our camp and prepared to leave, I felt a sense of resolve settle within me. We didn't know what was coming. We didn't know if we would survive what was about to unfold, but we would fight. Together, and I would protect her, no matter the cost. The stars were bright above us as we made our way through the dense forest, the weight of the upcoming confrontation heavy in the air. Amelia was silent beside me, her steps purposeful, yet I could feel the storm raging inside her. She was ready to fight. No longer the weapon she once was, but something far more powerful. She was a survivor, a woman who had chosen her own path, no matter how dark or dangerous it might seem. We moved quickly, avoiding the main paths, always looking over our shoulders. The planet was vast, but our enemies had no doubt tracked our every move. I couldn't help but think that, somewhere out there, they were watching us, waiting for the right moment to strike. I can hear them, Amelia whispered, her voice tight. They're close. I glanced at her, a knot forming in my stomach. How close? Close enough to know that they won't stop until they have me back, she replied. And they'll destroy everything in their path to make that happen. I stopped in my tracks, turning to face her. The intensity in her eyes was unmistakable. She was ready to do whatever it took to protect us, to protect me. But I knew the price of that kind of resolve. Amelia wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for us both, and that made her more dangerous than any weapon. Amelia, I said, my voice low but firm. You don't have to do this. We can leave. We can go somewhere they can't find us. She shook her head, her eyes filled with determination. They'll never stop hunting me. As long as I'm alive, they'll keep coming. And I won't let them drag me back into that life. Not after everything I've learned. Not after you. I could see the conflict in her eyes, but the determination was stronger. She had made her choice, and I would stand beside her, no matter what came next. The night was eerily quiet as we made our way deeper into the wilderness. The only sound was the crunch of leaves beneath our feet and the distant hum of our ship's engines, still running, in the background. But that peace wouldn't last. It never did. Suddenly, a rustling in the trees behind us caught my attention. My hand went instinctively to the weapon at my side, but before I could react, Amelia held up her hand, signaling for me to stop. "They're here," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. A group of figures emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked in dark armor, their faces obscured by masks. Their movements were swift, purposeful. They were the ones she had run from, the ones who had made her into what she had feared becoming. And now, they had found her. I could see the fear in Amelia's eyes, but she didn't hesitate. She stood tall, her posture strong, her eyes locked onto the leader of the group, who stepped forward. His presence was commanding, his voice cold and harsh. "Amelia," he said, his voice a low growl, "you can't hide from who you are. You were made for a purpose, and you will fulfill it." "No," she spat, her voice fierce. "I'm not your weapon, not anymore." I stepped forward, standing beside her. "You won't take her," I said, my voice steady. "Not without going through me." The leader of the group chuckled, the sound grating against my nerves. "You think you can protect her? You're nothing but a human. You don't understand the power we've given her." Amelia's eyes blazed with a fire I hadn't seen before. "I understand more than you think," she said. "I understand what it means to choose, to be free." With that, the fight began. The battle was swift, intense, a blur of motion and sound. Amelia moved like a force of nature, her body flowing with the precision and grace of someone who had been trained for this very moment. She was a weapon, yes, but not the kind they had made her into. She was fighting for herself now, for the freedom she had earned. I fought beside her, taking down the soldiers who tried to get too close, my every move fueled by the knowledge that I couldn't let them take her. I couldn't let them win. The leader was the last to fall. As I pinned him to the ground, his mask cracked, revealing a face twisted in anger and disbelief. "You think you've won?" he hissed, blood dripping from his mouth. "You'll never escape what you are. You'll always be a weapon in the eyes of the universe." Amelia stepped forward, her eyes filled with pity. "Not anymore." With a swift motion, she ended the battle, her past finally behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. We had won, but the victory was bittersweet. There would be more battles to fight, more enemies to face. But for now, in that moment, we were free. I turned to Amelia, my breath coming in short gasps. She was standing tall, her body bruised but unbroken, her eyes focused on something far beyond me. "We're free," I said, my voice rough with emotion. She met my gaze, her expression softening. "For now," she whispered. "But we'll face whatever comes next, together." And as we walked away from the wreckage, side by side, I knew that no matter what the future held, we had already won. Together, we had rewritten the story. Together, we were no longer slaves to the past. We were free.